name's Skylar.
And my name is Tyler.
Before you listen to the brand new season of Dad's podcast, Over the Rainbow,
We want to say a big thank you to the traditional owners of the land we're on today.
we're standing on the lands of the Wurundjeri people who have looked after this land for thousands and thousands of years.
Do you know which land you're on right now?
Do you? We want to pay our respects to elders past, present, and the ones who are growing up today, just like us. This land was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Hello and welcome to Over the Rainbow, a Queer Dads podcast series. I am Murray and I am your host. Last season, I did an episode about some of the challenges your relationship might face when your rainbow family is created. Out of all the episodes I recorded, this one was downloaded the most, and it made me wonder, are relationship challenges more an issue than what we're letting on? So to talk about things some more, I've invited back my good friend and relationship expert, Anthony Lekkas. Anthony Lekkas is a family violence consultant, trainer, relationship counsellor, and accredited mental health social worker. And his work spans over 2 decades of working in the LGBTI and mainstream not-for-profit health sector, as well as his own private practice. Anthony is an advocate for the Bi+ community, and he is the founder of Melbourne Bisexual Network, as well as the co-creator of one of Joy FM's only radio programs dedicated to Bi+ people, Triple Bypass. He is a proud rainbow dad to his 2 gorgeous boys and a good friend of mine. And I loved our chat, and I'm sure you will too. Let's take a listen. Now, today we are going to talk about managing relationships because you're a relationship counsellor.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say expert. Would you claim that?
My partner would probably throttle me if they heard me say I was a relationship expert.
It's bullshit. We've got you back here because if I looked back at the stats of the episode downloads, the episode titled Managing Your Relationship with a Child in the Mix was the most downloaded episode. So I think it resonated with my listeners. And so I've invited you back today. Let's go deeper. I felt like we were surface last time in terms of the strategies we put out there. Let's start with some of the presentations you see from queer couples that are dads.
And managing your relationship with a child in the mix. I know this is a play on words now, but I think nurturing your relationship is where a lot of couples end up realizing that they've been neglecting once they get to couples therapy because it feels like they're just managing it.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And I think one of the things about gay dad families is that there tends to be a lot of discussion. This is different to, I guess, straight parents. There tends to be a lot of discussion, usually because of surrogacy and fertility.
What to become parents.
Yeah, around the planning, around who's going to do what are the expectations. And also the pressure or the expectation that the primary carer is going to be on probably the person who's contributed biologically to the process, either by sperm donation or the person who's pushed for the child more.
Okay.
Like, could you imagine, like, if I was wanting to have the child and I've donated my sperm and but I'm saying I don't want my career disrupted. I want you to be the parent who's going to stay at home. I guess if you're a woman, you've got society backing you with that comment, don't you?
Yep.
So,
well, you're primed. It's like you say, it's like you slot into that role quite easily. I'm sure there's definitely challenges, but they're unique challenges to when you become a parent. But in terms of society and fitting into that role, it's the man that goes out and works and it's the woman that does the primary caregiving.
Right.
And nobody blinks at that. It's accepted. Not necessarily perhaps maybe when there's 2 dads.
Right. Even when the straight couple, if they both have values around equality, that in a way is irrelevant. The pressures are there, the expectations are there that women will just fall into the primary care. Whereas with gay dads, it becomes more of a conversation, but still some tensions show up. There can be some sort of realizations along the way when you've got a screaming baby on your hands. And I think we talked about this last time when your partner gets to walk in the door with a smile on his face and the kids are delighted to see Dad's come door. Yeah, the fun dad's here.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there seething. You got something burning on the stove. And so managing family life, you can feel like we're just managing. We're performing our roles, we're managing, and what ends up getting eroded away over time, just because you end up becoming really functional, right, is the emotional, the romantic and sexual connection in the couple.
So with the thought around perhaps maybe a couple goes into becoming parents and they've decided, okay, you're the one that's going to go work for whatever reason. I'm going to be the stay-at-home dad. That's been discussed, that's been agreed to, but then the actual reality of that position comes into play. And for the most part, it's wonderful and you love being a parent and, we're not taking away that fact. But I think any new parent, gay or straight, will say that it's relentless. It doesn't stop. You don't get a day off. You're just being pulled with the tide. Then I would imagine that the feelings of resentment would come up because you're watching your partner carry on working, doing all those
doing what men do.
Doing
what a man's meant to do.
Yeah.
And I think, and we talked about this off air a while ago around, what's it like for the primary care, the dad, the primary parent, the dad who has to go to play groups, who sits at the Coles playground while he grabs a coffee and sits amongst all the other mums.
Yeah, and perhaps maybe feels out of place and maybe feels isolated.
Yes.
And then the pressures of being a parent, that chipping away, and what that does to the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. So that inadequacy, that sense of having to, I think what I see a lot with gay dads is having to prove myself that I'm a good, worthy parent. Because one of the most, and this really rolls me up, and I've heard it myself and I've seen it being said to other gay dads, mostly from straight people, who say something like, so who's the mum and who's the dad?
Oh my God. If I had $1.
It is the most undermining thing. It's awful.
Yeah.
And I think it sets up this idea about what a normal family looks like and what men and women should be doing. Actually, I just remembered that Peter Costello, the treasurer back in the Howard government era, they were trying to raise the population rate. And
they gave the TV or something.
Well, they wanted to have more children. Yes. Telling people to have more children. And he came out and famously said, have one for mum, one for dad, and one for the country.
Right.
And that just was this powerful message about what a supposedly normal family should look like.
Right, yeah.
And that was pre-marriage equality. And I mean, there was queer people don't have the platform now that we did back well, we've got a better platform now to be heard. But I think there's that expectation about, what men should be doing when it comes to contributing to family life, I think does have an impact on the dad who is the primary carer of the children in some way that doesn't usually come up, like you said, until later.
Yeah.
Like you're all for being the stay-at-home dad, but then sort of over time, you do feel like you're missing out.
So if a couple were to present with those kind of, the scenario that I just gave, we're here because we're not seeming to be connecting at the moment. I've got the pressures of being a parent. I'm either consciously or subconsciously feeling isolated for whatever reason, but it's having an effect on the relationship. Then the other partner's saying, I'm overworked, all I do is work, I come home, I'm handed the baby or I'm handed the child and told it's my turn to parent, I'm exhausted from it. In terms of the relationship, we've got no time for it.
Yeah.
I mean, hypothetically speaking, I've come at...
It's a very... yes. Sounds a bit familiar. Like I just got home. Can't I just get a minute can I just have a shower? I've been home all day and I've been watching the clock, waiting for you to walk in the door. Very common. And I think that I
used to say to Stephen, when we were living in London, we had a big staircase leading into the entrance of our house. And he would come up to the landing and I would say, the first thing I would say is, why aren't you talking to me? It'd be like I've just walked in the door.
Yes, absolutely. And and trying to find those times to have those sorts of conversations with your partner, they're on the go, aren't they? When you've got kids, because when the kids are asleep, walk and talk. That's right. Because when the kids are finally in bed, you just want to doom scroll and you just want to chill and you want to zone out, because you've got about an hour to get to sleep. And
Well, this is an interesting thing as well when I think about it. A lot of, I'm generalizing here, but for a lot of queer couples that come parents, it's not straight away. It's a slow burner. You usually have been together in their relationship for many, many, many years, much longer, I would say, statistically than what maybe a straight couple would. They would maybe get together, get married, have a child. It's sort of drawn out, in my experience, of what I've observed.
Well, I worked with a couple once where the stay-at-home dad, did end up feeling increasingly unhappy at having to be the parent. And he was the main driver of having children and going through the facilitating the surrogacy process. And he's given his family of origin once we got into therapy and we had to look at a little bit at what fathering meant to him and where he came from. I mean, there was a lot of trauma in his background. So being placed in the center of family where everyone depended on him ended up becoming quite a triggering and emotionally painful experience for him, given his history. So some of these things can take us by surprise. I think one of the things that we can see also was that when the children are the ages that we might have been when we've experienced particular harms back in our sort of upbringing or family of origin experiences, that there can be a resonance with us.
What do you mean?
I mean, if we say, for example, if our child is like Ari, I remember his first term of starting prep.
This is your son?
This is our son. And I remember he would, oh God, I just can feel it now. In the mornings when he'd say, Daddy, I don't want to go to school today. And I'd be, my heart would be crushing. I just want to say, you stay with me. I'm not going to work. You're not going to school.
I'll protect you.
We're staying together. And I'd try and talk him through it. And I'd be walking and I could feel his hand, his little shaky hand. We're walking through the schoolyard and he's lining up. And I was just hoping that he'd be okay. And then he grabs onto my leg and I think, oh shit, how are we going to? And
he's
so,
a koala.
and it reminded, and I thought, what was, and I almost took him home. I remember I almost took him home. And in the end, I'm so glad I didn't, because I would have, in a way, de-skilled him from trying to manage his own little feelings.
It's a super tough one though, because I have that with my daughter all the time.
It is. But I thought what was the resonance for me is when I started primary school, I was gripping onto the wall and they were dragging, the teacher and my mum were both dragging. I was such an anxious kid.
Yes.
And I think it was first day or second day. I can't remember. It was very early. It had happened more than once.
Yeah.
They were prying my fingers off the door. I didn't want to be left alone without my mum.
And then your mum would go and probably cry in the car.
Yeah, right. Well, now I would imagine I can understand that. I wouldn't have thought that back then, but I think these are the things that parenting can be so triggering. And you have a lot of these things, and when your partner is at work all day, and I'm not saying he's not contributing, but it's a very emotionally taxing job and triggering in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
So when you're sort of swimming in that constantly on neediness and vulnerability and dependency and everyone needing something from you and your partner coming home and he wants to fuck at the end of the night as well, needing something. You're kind of a bit exhausted. You kind of want to just tell everyone to fuck off, at the end. And so the relationship connection can really start to, and I'm not saying it's the fault of the parent who can't.
No, we're not blaming anyone.
Right.
It's more when you're in a relationship, you develop a rhythm with each other and the relationship. So you've got yourself and then you've got the couple stuff. And then it just becoming a family, just by the virtue of becoming a family, disrupts that rhythm.
Yes.
And so you have to kind of recalibrate the relationship.
You do.
What are some of the ways, Anthony, what are some of the strategies that you would give to your clients? Broad stroke strategies.
Well, name the problem.
Okay.
Having a shared understanding of what is the problem. And I know.
What about if you don't know what the problem is?
Well, it's usually my partner.
Yeah. So what's the problem? He's the problem.
I can identify it pretty quickly, right? No, I think naming the problem in therapy anyway is looking at what we call their dynamic.
Yes,
what
right.
stirs up for both of them where both of them end up getting anxious and reactive with each other.
And probably play out the same positions each time that they're in an argument.
That's
or
right.
they go into that zone.
That's right.
Yeah.
Where, partner may roll his eyes and say, here we fucking go.
Yeah.
And you always do that. How dismissive of you.
Do you know what? I have to say I'm laughing a little bit in my head because my go-to, it just drives him wild, is the roll of the eye. I just do the, gosh, like I'm just so bored of what you're saying.
Right.
And you can just see the blood's boiling. It's my low blow, but it works.
Well, and we may not even intend for that to be thrown as a grenade, but we may genuinely feel like rolling off, for fuck's sake.
Yes.
And so that cycle of reactivity becomes the problem.
Yeah.
It's not so much about how you're feeling in that moment, because your feeling behind the eye roll is what we need to get to.
Right.
Right. But the information your partner has is the eye roll.
Yeah.
And then he goes into fuck you mode.
Yes, right.
Right. And then guess what happens when you're rolling your eyes trying to be seen and understood or attended to, and you roll your
We're
eyes
not communicating.
and he's in fuck you mode. You end up, so you either shut down or you push back and protest. And so
or you go to a place that you're probably not proud of, and then afterwards you go, well, I'm sorry I acted that way. But then it takes away from whatever the argument was, because you're apologizing for your behavior, but not really what brought you there.
Look, that's the mess you sort of mop up, isn't it?
Yeah.
We have to get to the underlying issue. But usually the more explosive partner who ends up feeling quite ashamed or terrible about how they've reacted, and if the more sort of shut down partner is the one who leaves you out on the ledge owning it all, right? Because you want some sort of
meet in the middle type arrangement.
You'd need that, some common ground to say, okay, we're both struggling with this.
Yeah.
So using we language is really important. We're getting caught up in this. Okay. We're both struggling with this. You're an asshole, but we're not.
I mean, percentage-wise, it's 90% your fault. But look, I'll take on 10%.
I'll take on 10%.
15 final.
Yeah, I'll stretch myself for you. So naming it is a good start, but it doesn't solve it. But at least it gets you back on the same team.
Yeah.
So we need to understand the dynamic is the problem, not each other.
Yeah.
And to normalize it as well. I think that especially with men, when we're even as queer people, where we're socialized to be kind of a little bit sort of unemotional in the ways that we do relationships. And when I say unemotional, is to not go straight to vulnerability, which is to, in a way, if we think about dads, and I ran a tuning into teens dads group. And
what do you mean tuning into teens?
This is a therapeutic group for dads who are parenting teenagers.
Oh, whoa.
And
stick around.
Yeah.
Go on another episode.
Well, these were lovely blokes.
Yeah.
Of mixed orientation, and in terms of straight and gay dads,
right.
Men who wanted to come to improve their parenting for their teenagers. And it's just wonderful being in a room full of dads who can talk about their specific relationship context, and dads who just want to be really good parents for their teenagers. Because I'm dreading the teenage years.
I think everyone's dreading. I had Rodney come on and talk about he'd raised his child to an adult, and he very much drew the line in the sand that everything before 12 and everything after 12, I'm not sure whether he said 12, but certainly your teens, parenting a teenager is very different to parenting a child.
Yeah, I'm scared of them. I did youth work with teenagers, and I just constantly wanted to be liked by them. I found it, I wasn't cool at all. So anyway, so what we noticed across the different dads, were the thing that was almost evident in every dad was they had this unintentional approach where they were emotionally dismissive of their teenagers. And they weren't trying to be, because they were trying to solve the problem too quickly.
Have you got an example?
All right. For example, there's a problem at school with one of their friends. They didn't get invited to a party, or didn't get invited to an online. So there was something about some group online, and they felt excluded. And the dad was saying, "Oh, don't worry about it. You've got other friends.
Yes.
You're great. That person's probably jealous of you." And I heard this dad use all of his resources and thinking and reflection and feelings to try and support their child, but it was in a way, and it wasn't intentional, but it was very dismissive emotionally.
Right.
And I think we can do that really quickly as men, because we're all socialized to stay away not only from our own feelings, but from others as well. Vulnerabilities, I'm talking, not just any feelings, but vulnerable, painful feelings.
I need you to unpack that a little bit more.
Well, little boys and girls, and there's a lot of research on this as well, that does suggest that little girls receive very different responses to little boys do when they're crying.
Yeah, like man up.
Well, a little boy might be
Or boys don't cry.
Look, come on, you'll be okay. Pat the little boy on the bum. You're okay. Oh, that's not such a bad bruise. Good on you, my little soldier. where little girls are more likely to be given a cuddle and say, "That hurt, darling, come here."
princess,
Oh
yes.
my God, let me rub your back.
And that they are unconscious behaviours that we just roll out in this situation?
They are the messages that we get because of gender conditioning.
Mhm.
I mean, we can't escape this powerful force of gender.
Or ignore that it's not there.
It is so there.
It's so there.
As much as we used they, them pronouns for Ari, and we tried to get little Ari people to respond to Ari with they, them pronouns, I just, in the end, I thought I was, being queer and political, and my family's not going to be invaded by this sort of heteronormativity, and it was just he, and I just started saying yes, he. It just takes over. It was just easy, and I was just exhausted with the fight of having to correct people because parenting's hard enough.
It's I don't have time. Let's just forget that.
Right.
Yeah, no, I hear
So
you.
the emotionally dismissiveness is not intentional, but I think that's one of the common things we'll see with dads with wanting to just solve their little problems and not get them to focus on how awful it is. Now, you do want to problem solve, and I think with teenagers, what you want to do is support them to come up with some ideas themselves. We need to have a few of our own ready to go.
Yeah.
But, we definitely want to validate their feelings first. You really want to see their feelings. Gee, that looks like that hurts. And one way to support people to see their feelings is to comment on what's in front of you.
Yeah.
Hey, you're looking down at the ground as we're talking. What that does, it helps the child. And even if we do it with our partners, actually, but what that does, it really...
Stephen, you're looking at the ground when we're fighting.
Yes.
He'll be like,
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm going to use that one and I'll say, look, I was giving it.
Yeah. Hey, babe, you're watching porn as we're trying to have this conversation, But so to be really seen and then to have that sort of validated, like, yes, of course that would be hard. That sounds so awful. So we want to see it. We want to validate it. We want to engage the feeling, right? By asking more questions about it.
This is a good segue because I felt that we went off course because I was really interested in the fact that you did that teens workshop.
Yeah.
But that's true of everything, of even a child, of your partner in a relationship, anyone. They want to feel seen. If they've got an issue and they've got a problem and they're raising that, the last thing that they want you to do is dismiss it or sweep it under the carpet as if it's not there.
Yes, and like it happens subtly, and I think as dads we need to just keep an eye on that. And I think that's just as important that we do that for our kids as it is for us as a couple, as dads.
Yeah.
And so addressing some of the emotional needs or unmet needs in the parenting relationship or the couple relationship is really important.
How much would you say when you get couples in and they're talking about their problems, like you said, to get to the point where you want to see a counsellor, there's a problem. There's a problem that's been identified by the couple because that's what brought them to counselling. And I would imagine a lot of couples would try and solve those things themselves before it gets to the stage that they need to see a counsellor. So commendable to anyone that goes and sees a relationship counsellor. It's a huge, huge thing.
Especially gay people. I think gay psychology spaces has been very pathologizing of queer people historically. We've got a very awful history with psychology and psychiatry spaces.
Yeah.
So I think for any therapist who's sitting in front of a queer couple, I think and not in a sort of condescending way or some superficial way, but really acknowledging the effort it takes to sit in front of a therapist to say, we're doing family life and we're struggling.
Yes, for sure.
And I
because
think
that picture of a perfect family and I've got this and we're coping.
And I know that there are gay dads out there who feel like they need to constantly prove themselves because of the worry that they're going to be viewed as problematic anyway, as parents, as dads, as a family. And so this pressure to really, prove yourself in some way and to do parenting in some sort of a perfect way. I think that pressure does exist there in very specific and unique ways for gay dads. I'm not saying there aren't pressures for other parents, that's right. But I think for the gay dads are up against this view of being problematic. And I think problematic in a very sort of pathologizing way and in a harmful way. I mean, we saw drag queen story time recently at the Pride Centre where police were called because people were presuming that the queers in there were somehow sexualizing the children or trying to recruit them into some, perverted sort of discussion with children when they were it's just a drag queen wanting to read Where is the Green Sheep?
So how much do you think some of those biases that perhaps maybe queer dads feel I'm talking about the primary parenting role, where it's seen by society that position shouldn't be held by them? So on the surface, everyone's like, oh, great, you're a dad, that's wonderful, blah, blah, blah. We're talking about the unconscious biases that exist for that primary dad person.
I mean, let me ask that question back to you then. Have you felt that experience, that level of scrutiny, the way that you walk into social spaces?
It's an uneasiness, and I've spoken to other queer dads about this, even sleepovers, even, coming you talk to a lot of gay dads, they don't have sleepovers because they don't want to be put in the scenario where the other parents are saying, no, I don't think you should be sleeping at their house, and then that uncovering a bias that they just don't want to know about. It's an uncomfortable position. And that's not just myself. That I've spoken to many dads that have felt that uneasiness of when you go into a scenario and you have to expose yourself as a queer dad or a two-dad family because of whatever reason that it's brought up and you have to declare that.
Yeah, and I worry that therapists who don't have a queer affirmative lens would call that internalized homophobia.
Right.
Rather than your very important internal alarm bells that protects you from discrimination.
Right.
Right. We want to preserve that mechanism and not pathologize it as if you need to not worry so much or, maybe you can sort of take a chance or build a relationship with those other parents. And I think that internalized homophobia is a complicated term, but I think that those are the real examples of external discrimination. And discrimination today, especially I think for gay dads, is very subtle. It's not going to be, overt, usually homophobia, even though that me and my partner once were out at, Smith's Kebabs after a night out at the circuit with extra garlic sauce and onion. The stinkier the better, that kebab. But I just remember we'd met these two, other people circuit that we were dancing with, and we had a laugh with, and we were all leaving. And this was my night out, my one, I think probably the first night out I had after Ari was born. And these two women were asking us, what you have a child? Yes. And who's this other woman? And does she know that you're out like this? And
wow.
the level of,
what were they saying about the woman?
Well, there was this sense that we had, as queer men, we had sort of set up a situation with a woman where we got a child out of her, and now she's back at home looking after this child where we can go live our big gay life but still have the job. It felt awful and messy. There was this
whilst waiting in the line for a kebab. All of this was coming up.
Well,
it's true, though. It's true. The anxieties that I've felt in terms of, a lot of those have been in shopping lines, grocery lines, where there's been a woman in front turning around going, oh, aren't you the cutest out with your daddy? And I'm like, any moment she's going to say to these kids, where's mummy?
Right.
Where's mummy?
Yes.
And these anxieties taking over going, I don't know this woman. Do I just nod and smile because she's going to go away and I'm never going to see her again? Or am I going to have to explain to her, actually, they've got two dads or whatever. This is all in the grocery line, waiting for a scenario to happen that may not have even played out that way.
That's right.
But it's the anxiety that I'm feeling waiting in the line going, oh, God, how am I going to explain this?
Well, any queer person listening to this would know that just the anticipation of discrimination already gets you preparing for it.
For sure.
I mean, I've got queer tattoos on my hands, and I'm very aware of how my hands are positioned, even when I go to RE school. When I'm standing, even just this morning, it's usually, there's a couple of dads there, but it's mostly mums there dropping their kids off. And it's silly. And I'll tell myself, firstly, who cares? And there's nothing to worry about. But I'm just so used to being very aware of who I let take a glance at my queer tat and who I don't.
On your knuckles, you have LGBT.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is the community that I've felt most supported by and loved by. And just on that, I think chosen family is not an added extra. I think it's essential. It's essential that we have chosen families, other queer parents who we can consider family, that we can build strong, meaningful relationships with. Because, I mean, you would know, gay dad events, it's just this, it's so, you can just drop your shoulders and relax, and you don't have to prove anything to anybody. and and parenting improves.
Yes.
I mean, when you're a more relaxed parent and less anxious
Absolutely.
about getting it right, you're more flexible. You're a bit more, you can be more attuned to your children, and you can let some things go as well.
Well, that's a good strategy. Anyone listening to this that's a rainbow dad that perhaps maybe is feeling the pressures of parenting, perhaps maybe there's cracks in the relationship because for whatever reason, get yourself along to a Rainbow Dads event and mix with other dads just like you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be good for your kids also to see an event full of dads, full of loving dads and other children who are growing up in the same sort of kind of family context, a similar family context.
Absolutely.
We need to see ourselves
Visibility.
represented. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Let's go back into, there's a couple in front of you. They're saying, look, ever since we've had the child, I'm getting no sleep. I'm doing the primary parenting role. I'm just jack of it. I want my old life back. I miss adulting. I miss all of that kind of stuff. The other parent saying, I thought this was going to be wonderful, but I'm just working extra long. I come home and we're just fighting because there's just tension, and then I have to do the parenting, and I go to bed exhausted. I wake up exhausted. I'm barely surviving, let alone the relationship. The only thing that we're probably getting right is, raising our child, which we're putting everything into. We're pouring everything into that. What do you say? I know there's no magic bullet, but what do you say?
Well, I wonder about the expectations of each other, because sometimes if there is some area of the relationship where you can preserve your intimate bond, you can reconnect in that space, then you can feel like your cup's full and you can take on all the other life pressures that you might have sort of worried or complained about. All of a sudden that stuff is something you can take on if you're, because if you're feeling sort of emotionally and sexually neglected, there's two sort of key fundamental areas of a relationship life that we need to ensure that our needs are met there. All right, our emotional and sexual connect. That's what an intimate, romantic relationship is. Now, that's almost always the very first relationship that gets sort of neglected and disregarded when children are on the scene. I mean, how do you compete with very needy, vulnerable children who are strongly dependent on you? I don't know if I mentioned this book last time, but The Baby Bomb, because it's like a bomb that goes off at home. I mean, that book its basic premise is that if the relationship between dads or between the parents is suffering, then every relationship in the household suffers.
Right.
That is the most important relationship in the household that is looked after, that it is focused on, and that everyone's getting their needs met in a good enough way. Maybe not a perfect way, especially if your children are very young. Like once they go
I don't think anyone's aiming for perfect.
Right. Yeah. Or equal. It doesn't even have to be fully equal. But equity just means that everyone is seen and taken seriously, and everyone has their needs accommodated in a good enough way.
So you're going back to that dynamic that you were talking about earlier, that in an argument or in a relationship, there's a dynamic that plays out where you assume the position consciously or subconsciously. Well, that's up for debate. Would it be fair to say try and break that cycle as soon as you start to move into it?
Well, it'll be less damaging. There's less mess to mop up if you can catch it early and you can disrupt it.
Yeah, and be aware of it.
And de-escalation for highly escalated couples. I know that, me and my partner are a bickering couple and we can clash really strongly. So de-escalation can be really important to try and, prevent an explosion.
What does that look like, de-escalation?
Well, it means that when I'm feeling myself getting really upset at something, I need to be able to take a moment to reflect on what's going on for me, right? So that I just don't dish out my reaction to my partner to deal with, right? So I can't, in those moments, I can't rely on my partner to soothe me or to attend to whatever upset I have because I've got them in the war zone now,
right?
I've fired a grenade their way and now they're ready to come back, all right? The last thing they're going to give me is what I ideally need underneath that.
Yeah.
So de-escalating and again, being able to name it, right? Look, we're getting caught up in this. We're intensifying. Using we language can be important. So when it settles, when it softens, and then what we call is the repair stage, we come back together and then we can, like you said earlier, oh God, now my reaction is the thing that we're focusing on rather than the unmet need I have.
Yes,
right?
Yeah. We've lost
my initial
focus.
point. Yeah. So you need to come back to that, but it needs to be done in a softer way. And that's usually what repair does. It helps things, it softens. We usually apologize. you'd want both people to own their part in it or to understand the contribution they each make to what just happened. Like, okay, yeah, you rolled your eyes at me, Murray, and I don't like that, but I guess I'm not sensitive to what it might be like for you the minute I'm walking in the door, right? So
Because
that's
what you were saying, Stephen, was bullshit.
yeah.
Another grenade.
Yeah. I'll tattoo it on your forehead so you never forget what it's like for me when you walk in the door. Yeah, you want a reminder? No, and then that begins the process of getting underneath the dynamic, what exists behind it. And that's where we want to stay mostly in couple therapy. And people come to counselling to spend more time underneath the dynamic where you can do it in a more controlled way, where the therapist is there to contain the discussion and to support the couple to notice how they're starting to they're starting to activate each other.
Well, I would imagine that most aren't aware that they even fall into this role. It's like, do you know that every time that we argue that I do this and you do this, we don't get anywhere, but isn't it interesting that we're now naming it?
Yes. Yeah. It is hard to notice it in the moment because, it's very difficult to be that reflective when you're being reactive.
What would you say in terms of, you touched on it briefly, that if the primary relationship in the family is not going well, everything else is affected. I'm sure many couples would say, oh, we don't fight around the children or the children don't see it or whatever. But the suggestion you're making is that it does have a flow-on effect.
I can't sit here and say for sure what happens in every home.
No.
But if parents are telling me, trying to convince me that their children never see it because they're asleep or they're not in the same room, I have to watch my own internal stirring up of something that happens inside me because I think that, I just remember when I was a kid and we used to lay in bed and hear parents yelling and screaming and we'd be so quiet and we'd be pretending we were sleeping because the alternative would have been too scary to interfere or to make a noise or to make it worse for mum and dad. So what the children usually do, they tend to do their homework or they tend to be really quiet.
Or they might pretend that they're not hearing it when they are hearing it.
Or they pretend they're not hearing it or they try and be the good little boy or girl or they have a tantrum and meltdown because it's too overwhelming for them to listen to. Okay. And so I think that children can absorb the emotional atmosphere in the home. They have their brains, although they're just modeling themselves at a very young age, their little bodies can still absorb the tension in the home. And the impact of yelling in a feuding couple, which they have no control over, which they know that they can't influence or do anything. They don't have a prefrontal cortex or the age to be able to move in confidently and it's not their job either to move in to disrupt the adult tension. So again, I'm not saying that we've bickered and argued in front of our children as well, but I think trying to respond to children somehow and explain to them a little bit about what dad's doing and your daddy's just had a little bit of an argument and we're sorry if we scared you. Again, I think going back to validate their feelings and to try and sort of comfort them through that can help to unburden them of their sense of responsibility that they might feel where they may need to feel like they have to be quiet to not make it worse or intervene and say, stop arguing. Imagine the level of responsibility that child would feel.
How can you touched on this briefly again, but I want real strategies, Anthony. If there's a couple out there and they're listening and they think, look, we just feel really stuck in our relationship. We're not really at the point where we think we need to see a counsellor, but we're listening to this podcast. What are some of the things that they can implement? You touched on it briefly in terms of protecting the relationship that once was and cultivating and all the rest of it. Throw out some strategies that they can do to protect their relationship from feeling stuck.
Okay, know what your triggers are. Know what the thing is that's going to really activate you.
Well, what about if it's as simple as, I'm bloody tired?
Okay.
I'm tired. I'm no longer working. I'm no longer doing the things that I used to do. I'm not going out and going to work and going out for coffees and lunches and working and then coming home and, relaxing with TV. It's the daily grind every single day. I'm cleaning the house. I'm doing the washing. I'm mopping the floors. I'm looking after the kids. I'm taking the kids everywhere.
Okay. Do you hear that? That parent is saying, I'm doing this. I'm overwhelmed. I'm on my own. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I would be interested in how his partner responding to that.
Right.
Right. Because you got to understand, what does that mean in that relationship? right? Because if partner's saying, I share your worry, I can, do you want me to adjust things to be home earlier, or just to sort of validate the overwhelm, and sometimes that
Rather than perhaps maybe the other partner going, well, what the fuck do you think I am? I'm tired as well. I'm going to work every day.
Yeah,
Yes,
pardon the fuck
I
up.
see what you're saying.
Yeah. So you want to see how it plays out in that relationship, right? And but also if on a deeper level, if you've had a historical experience in your own family where your needs have been sort of ignored,
Mhm.
or you've been made to feel invisible, that's going to feel more sharply for that dad who says those words. I'm doing this, and I know, see me, please see me, help me is the underlying message.
Yeah.
And if they've grown up in a family where they haven't felt emotionally tuned into or responded to, if they've felt a little bit ignored or invisible, then they're likely to react very strongly, whether
Right.
it's either a chronic hard shutdown or a really strong, loud protest.
Uh-huh.
And if the partner isn't aware of that background sensitivity. So that's why I'm saying you need to know your trigger so
Gotcha.
that you can communicate it from that place. Because when you communicate it from that place, you're more likely to attract a more compassionate response.
Wow. Great.
I mean, usually.
Really good.
Okay. I think other things, just on what might sound like a sort of day-to-day kind of a level, what do couples do to nurture their bond? Where they, it's the transition from the couple relationship to parenthood can be tricky, and it's constantly evolving. But what about the couple relationship? I mean,
what about if that's neglected just for the fact that there's no time with work and parenting?
I don't buy it.
Okay.
I'm
all
not
right.
buying it.
Yeah.
All right. If I was a non-parent, I'd say, oh yeah, that sounds hard. I was like, no, I'm not going to buy it. You can make time.
Right.
All
okay.
right.
Good.
I worked with that, and this is a lesbian couple I worked with who were, oh God, they had quite a story as becoming parents and also experiencing some awful homophobia. But they talked about there was something, I think they said it was Sunday no screen hour or something like. I can't remember how they called it, what they called it, but it was once
no technology.
It was once the kids were in bed. And I know for me, privately in my mind, I'm thinking that's my sacred time. No one's going to invade that. When the kids are in bed, don't come near me. I've got my twisties, I've got my chocolate, and I've got my TikTok. That's all. But for them, they prioritize their relationship. Now I've got to practice what I preach here, but they prioritize their relationship, and that worked for them. You know what they did? They did things that sound really cheesy, but it forced them to really look at each other. They eye gazed for a little while, and they spoke, and they even had moments where they agreed to come to bed naked and just lay in bed, and not with the expectation to even have sex, but which often led them into having sex with each other.
Right. Okay.
All right. So it's I mean it's
they just changed things up. And it was 1 hour, he said.
Well, it's the 1 hour of no screen time, and then they actually threw in let's just do that naked,
right?
For a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
And almost always they'd end up having sex. And this was a relationship that was often that they had lost their appetite for sex as well. So
that's super interesting. If you want changes, make changes.
Well, yes, and you need a mutual commitment.
Mm-hmm.
My partner and I tried to do similar things, and I embarrassingly,
you just went up and stared in their face.
If any of my clients are listening to this, they're going to know that I don't practice what I preach. But my partner would try and reinvigorate areas of our relationship, and I'm just like, oh, I can't be. Fuck, I'm so tired. Can we,
but
tomorrow?
That's very true of a lot of relationships. You know that there's a problem. You know that there's something that needs to be fixed, but who the hell's got the energy to actually fix it? But this suggestion that you're making, and whatever works for you, it was 1 hour a week.
Well, if nothing changes, they say. And if you're wanting to, and can I just say as well, I think as gay men, the pressures on the expectation to be sexually active and to enjoy sex and to have that sexual prowess and to also have a body that we consider, quote, suitable or acceptable for sexual behavior as gay. I mean, queer men, the pressures on the expectation of queer men to have their bodies conform to a particular ideal, I mean, that has an impact on how we feel about ourselves as sexual beings in the bedroom. I mean, we've probably, a lot of us probably have pop bellies now,
Speak for yourself. You certainly do.
I know. I go to the gym. I feel pretty good about it, but then it's ruined by the end of the day, with what I put in my mouth. But I think that it's a normal process, I think, for any couple relationship where your body changes, your appetite changes. And I don't think it's about having a sexual appetite anyway. I think that can come when people introduce maybe some novelty back into their relationship.
Yeah. It's just one of the pressures among many.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Anthony, let's start to wrap things up. So in terms of you being a relationship counsellor, what are some of the things that you can just throw out there to anyone listening to this episode that's thinking, yeah, well, I can do that, and I can maybe, learn something from, what you've said earlier or whatever. What are some of the things that you can say to add on to everything that we've spoken to today?
Get a handbook on your partner.
Mm-hmm.
Know what triggers them, know what upsets them, know what they need to feel seen and comforted, or whatever their need is. It may not be to be seen or comforted. Maybe it's to be supported.
Yeah.
Maybe it's to be acknowledged occasionally. Know what ultimately they need and offer it up from a place of genuine love and care for them, and wanting to sort of offer that to them. And hopefully that's received as well.
I've actually, through this discussion, learned a lot in terms of if you understand why you react the way that you react, you're halfway there to solving the issue.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And also one of the hardest things for us to do when we're reactive is to
have awareness.
Have awareness of our vulnerability, but to share our need when we're vulnerable can be really hard if, as men, we haven't been socialized to have enough practice at telling our caregivers when we were children what we were needed when we were vulnerable. Because as little boys, I imagine a lot of us just got on with business or just went outside and played.
Yeah.
Or we weren't offered the opportunity. Not every man, but a lot of men.
We're generalizing with a lot of things that we've said.
Yeah. So if we haven't had the experience of not only slowing down and connecting with our vulnerability and saying, I feel so scared that you don't see me the way you used to. That makes me feel so inadequate about myself. And I worry that, I worry about losing you. And that's where ultimately I go when I start to think about that sort of stuff. I just need, and then so sharing that vulnerability can be hard, but I think what can be even harder is to say what we need when we're in that space. So know what your needs are. I need you to tell me that you love me, that you're not going to leave me. I know it sounds silly, but just I need you to tell me that. So when partner responds in that way, of course I'm not going to leave you. I love you. I'm right here. You're everything to me. When those words are said, when the vulnerable partner is connected with that vulnerability, I mean, that's where the real healing around some of those emotions.
De-escalates whatever issue it was.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It creates this intimacy.
So language is a huge, huge thing as well.
Yeah. And knowing your internal world, definitely. So getting a blueprint on each other, knowing how each other ticks underneath the surface and what you need is really important.
I'm laughing in my head because knowing how someone ticks is usually what the partner does to use against them. Like the eye roll, I know that's going to piss you off, so I'm going to make sure I throw in as many eye rolls as I can.
That's when you're in the dynamic, though. When you're in that softer, more trusting, vulnerable place, you tend to not want to. You tend to disarm each other, and and I think it can be hard. It can be hard to do. I think if with busy lives, but to find a time for that, I think needing to find a deliberate time in the week for some of that reconnecting time, I think is essential. It's really important. And it's going to look after your future relationship, because when the kids move out and they have their own lives, and, I think if there's been emotional distancing that's evolved over time.
Well, can we talk about that actually? Because I had that down in terms of we very much started off this chat talking about, well, what's it like when the relationship suffers, when there's a new child that comes in and a new baby and managing the new baby? Equally, flip that. What happens to a relationship that has been neglected because the focus has been raising the children? And I actually know couples in this situation.
It's the empty nest syndrome.
Yeah. And then they're like, we've got nothing in common with each other. And it just ends, once the children are adult. I'm sure you would see that.
Well, children have been heavily relied upon to get all your needs met, because our intimacy needs and our needs for connection and worthiness don't just disappear if we don't get them from our partner. We sometimes get them from our children.
Right.
And we become our children's everything. And we rely on them to, even if they've moved out of home. Now, don't forget to call me on my birthday. So
called the parent guilt trip.
yeah, and I grew up with a Greek mother. The Greek mother guilt, I know all about it, right?
Yeah.
But and so it's sort of it's okay. I think when our children become adults, it's okay for them to have a little bit more responsibility in their adult relationships with their parents. But they're forever our children, and we're forever their parents, right?
Yes, yeah.
But I think to get those intimacy needs met from your partner,
Yes.
is whose job it is really to.
So what would you say? Does that that would happen over time, right? You know, that relationship would feel more disconnected and more foreign, and then you just get into a groove where you're doing your thing, the partner's doing their own thing, and then the focus is the kids.
It becomes normalized, and that entrenched.
But it doesn't get exposed until the kids are gone, and you're like, oh, hang on a minute, there's not a lot here.
That's right, because there could be bigger jobs and responsibilities and needs, and children coming home with graduations and all. There's lots of things to fill up family life and to distract you. Mm-hmm. But I think if you're starting to notice a subtle distance occurring between you and your partner, and you're not able to get the connection back to a place that feels good enough for you, to feel connected enough and to still feel like your couple relationship experience is still there, then I'd be just asking some questions. You ask your partner, are you concerned about this? Have you noticed this as well? And if you both agree it's a problem and you just want to do something about it, and you've tried and nothing's happened, come to therapy.
Yeah. Or implement, 1 hour a week lying naked.
Lie naked, screens off.
I actually love that because what they addressed, they knew that there was a problem. What can we do? Let's go really small, 1 hour. If you don't have that, then let's pack up shop.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
You'd be amazed at how quickly you get a boner just in 10 minutes of laying down.
Look, Anthony, thank you so much for joining us. I think we covered a lot. This is good.
Okay, I hope it was useful to the listeners.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, and the dreams that you dream of